There's a particular kind of waiting that's almost impossible to argue with. It's not procrastination. I mean, you're not sitting on the couch watching TV all day, but it's not avoidance either because you are deeply engaged with this thing. You've thought about it very carefully. You have researched it thoroughly. You've got a spreadsheet, maybe even two, and you've talked it through with the people who matter most to you. You've mapped out the risks and the consequences, and you've considered the timing. You are, by every visible measure, being very responsible. But that move still hasn't happening. The decision hasn't been made. This is fear with a planner. And it's the most sophisticated version of waiting that I can think of because it looks so much like wisdom that it's nearly indistinguishable from the real thing, even to you. But today, we're going to learn to tell the difference. Welcome to How to Lose the Weight, the podcast for women ready to stop waiting for someday and live life now. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini, and I'm here to help you break free from perfectionism, self-doubt, and the someday mindset. Together, we'll dive into real conversations about self-trust, empowerment, and living authentically. If you're ready to reconnect with your intuition and step into your power, you're in the right place. Let's lose the weight and start living fully right now. Welcome back to How to Lose the Weight. I'm Holly Toscanini, and we are in week 4 of the W.A.I.T Weight Framework series. We've named the inner council and the permission givers, the research loop, and the someday cycle. And each of those patterns has a flavor of avoidance that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And today's pattern is the hardest one to see because it doesn't always feel like avoidance at all. It feels like diligence. Fear with a planner is what happens when legitimate caution and genuine responsibility get borrowed by fear and kind of used as a cover. The planning is real, the research is real, and the care is real. The fear is also real, and it's the thing quietly kind of running the show. So we're going to break this down. We're going to distinguish responsible waiting from fear-based waiting and use 2 tools from the Unwaiting Method, micro moves, and the brave sentence method to start moving through it. So what does fear with a planner actually look like? Let me describe the pattern in a little detail because being able to recognize it is the first step here, and this one is going to require a little precision. Fear with a planner shows up as thoroughness, as due diligence, as being the person who has thought of everything. It looks like extensive research before any real commitment, long lists of pros and cons that never quite resolve, needing just one more talk before deciding, or waiting to have every single variable accounted for before you get started, and a deep, genuine belief that a little more preparation will eventually produce the perfection and certainty needed to take action. But here's the thing. None of those behaviors are really a problem. Thoughtfulness is valuable. Research is useful. And considering the consequences, well, that matters. The question isn't whether you're doing these things. It's what's driving you to do them. See, responsible preparation has a destination. It's gathering specific information in order to make a specific decision. And there's a natural end point, a moment where you've got everything you need and you move. Fear-based preparation has no end point. It has a moving horizon, and every answer just generates more questions. Every piece of information reveals yet another gap. Every conversation brings up another consideration that has to be taken into account. The preparation isn't building toward a decision. It's substituting for one. And the real giveaway is this. The amount of information gathered is wildly disproportionate to that which the decision actually requires. You have researched a career pivot with the thoroughness of a doctoral dissertation. You've analyzed a relationship decision from more angles than a NASA engineer. And you have prepared for a creative project so completely that you could write the manual before writing the actual thing. My friend, this is not preparation. That is very well-organized way of just not getting started. And here's what makes this pattern particularly hard to catch, especially for women over 40. We have spent decades being the responsible one, the one who thinks things through, the one who doesn't act impulsively, the one who considers the impact on everybody else before she makes a move. That is genuinely a strength. It's also, in this context, the disguise that fear wears so convincingly because it borrowed that outfit from something real. The planning is real, the care is definitely real, and the fear underneath it, using both of those things as a cover, is also real. So, how do you tell the difference between fear-based and responsible waiting? Well, this is the really practical piece because the distinction matters enormously. Not all waiting is fear. Some waiting is genuinely wise. The goal isn't to eliminate deliberation, it's to be able to tell honestly which kind you're in. So here are 4 ways to distinguish them. The first is whether the preparation has an end condition. Responsible waiting has a specific answer it's looking for. I'm waiting until I have X information, and then X is defined, it's findable and finite. Fear-based waiting doesn't have a defined end. It has a feeling it's looking for, usually certainty or confidence or readiness, and those feelings don't get to you through research. They arrive by taking action. The second is whether the goalposts continually move. If you've met the conditions for being ready and you're still not taking action, that's a signal. Responsible waiting ends when those conditions are met. Fear-based waiting never really ends. It just finds new conditions. Now, the third is the body check. When you sit quietly with the decision, not the research, not the planning, just the actual choice, what do you feel? Responsible waiting tends to feel like patience, like sitting with complexity, like genuine uncertainty that will resolve with just a little more information. Fear-based waiting tends to feel like a tight chest, a held breath, a low-level dread that the planning helps you not really notice. If you feel relief when you go back to researching and discomfort when you sit with just the decision itself, that's your body communicating something pretty important. And I want to spend a moment here because this piece matters more than it might seem. Your body is not separate from your knowing. It is your knowing, the most honest, least edited version of it. Your mind can rationalize, reframe, and build an airtight case for almost any position. Your body's a little harder to argue with. The tightness, the held breath, that flatness that arrives when you stop planning and just sit with the thing itself, that's not anxiety to be managed away. That's just your intuition trying to get through the noise. And we've talked about this on the show before, about the difference between signals and spirals, between the calm, quiet, consistent voice of your intuition and the loud, urgent, looping voice of your anxiety. The body check is one of the most direct ways to access this particular signal, not through more thinking, not through more research, but through the simple act of pausing and listening and asking, what am I actually feeling when I stop planning and just sit with this? And here's why this connects directly to whether you can move. Self-trust is the foundation of action, not confidence. Confidence comes later, after you take action. Self-trust has to come first. And self-trust is built in part by learning to treat your own intuition as a reliable source. When you override your body's signal again and again, reaching for more planning instead of just sitting with what you already feel, you erode that foundation. And you train yourself to believe that your own read on things just can't be trusted until it's validated externally. And then you wonder why making a move feels so impossibly hard. The body check isn't about becoming reckless or impulsive. It's about restoring your own inner signals to their rightful place in the process. You gather information, yes. You think things through, 100%. But then you check in with yourself. The actual you, not the you that's been filtering everything through Google and everybody else's frameworks. And you let that voice have a real vote in what you do next. Because here's the truth. The confidence to push through fear and make a move is not something that comes through the outside in. It grows from the inside out through the repeated experience of listening to yourself and finding out that your instincts are really worth trusting. Every time you do the body check and honor what you find there, even imperfectly, even when it's inconvenient, you build just a little more of that foundation. And eventually, the foundation becomes solid enough that fear doesn't disappear, no, but it stops being the thing in charge. Okay, the fourth is the honest question. If you had all the information you needed, all the information you could possibly gather. Would you take action? Sit with that for a second. Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the answer is no. Not because you needed more information, but because the move itself is what really frightens you, and no amount of preparation changes that. None of this is a verdict. It's a diagnosis. Seeing clearly what kind of waiting you're in, that's not failure. It's the beginning of working through your actual problem rather than wearing its disguise. And here's the compassionate piece I want to add before we move to the tools. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, it doesn't mean you've been fooling yourself or wasting time at all. Fear with a planner develops in people who care deeply, who take things seriously, who have real stakes in getting things right. It's a protection strategy worn by somebody who has a lot to lose and they know it. That deserves respect, even as you start to work with it a little differently. Now, here's the core truth about fear with a planner. More planning isn't going to resolve it. You cannot research your way to the courage this move or decision requires. The only way through fear-based waiting is to make a move. And the move has to be real enough to matter, but small enough that your nervous system doesn't completely shut down before it happens. And that's exactly what micro moves are designed for. A micro move in the context of fear with a planner is specifically a move you make without having all the information first. Not a reckless leap, a deliberate, small, real action taken before the planning is completed. The whole point is to break the belief that action requires some kind of certainty. One move made with incomplete information that doesn't cause a catastrophe, that's evidence that your nervous system can actually use. Now, here's how to apply this. Look at whatever you've been planning most thoroughly, a decision you've been making. Identify the smallest action that's part of actually doing it, not researching it, not planning it, but doing it. And then take that action before you feel ready, before the spreadsheet is finished, before the last conversation has been had, before you've thought of absolutely every variable. The imperfection is part of the point. Fear with the planner is, at its core, a pursuit of perfection and certainty before movement. So the micro move doesn't wait for certainty. It demonstrates in one small concrete instance that movement without certainty is survivable. The second tool is the brave sentence method, and this one works particularly well with this pattern because fear with a planner often involves a specific thing you haven't said yet. The brave sentence method is simple. Identify one sentence you've been not saying, that thing that if you said it out loud to the right person would move this situation forward in a real meaningful way. The sentence you've been planning around, preparing to say, almost saying, and then pulling back from. That's the one. It might be, I want to leave this job, or I need to change something about how we're doing this, or I'm going to pursue this even though I can't guarantee it's going to work out, or simply, I've decided. The brave sentence doesn't require planning to be finished. It doesn't require certainty. It does require honesty. Just one sentence said to the right person that moves the thing from the planning stage to the real world. What makes it brave isn't that it's dramatic. It's that it's real. It ends the preparation phase by introducing another person's awareness into the situation. And that creates a kind of accountability that no spreadsheet can ever replicate. Now, together, these two tools interrupt fear with the planner at its two most vulnerable points: the endless accumulation of information before action, and the one specific thing left unsaid that keeps the whole situation theoretical. One micro move, one brave sentence. That's your practice for this week. Write it on a Post-it note and put it somewhere where you're going to see it. All right? Write this. Waiting is not always fear, and preparation is not always avoidance. Now, the goal of this episode isn't to make you suspicious of every careful thought or thorough plan. The goal is to give you the ability to look clearly at your own waiting and ask, is this wisdom or is this fear hiding behind wisdom? Because the difference really matters. Responsible waiting ends. Fear-based waiting never does, not on its own, not through more planning, not by becoming more certain. It ends when you move forward. Now, your practice this week is to pick the thing you've been planning the longest. Look at it honestly, using the 4 distinctions we covered today, and ask yourself whether you're waiting because you genuinely need more information, or because you're waiting for a feeling of readiness or confidence that the planning has been quietly promising but never delivering. And then take one micro move before the planning is finished and find one brave sentence, the thing you haven't said yet, and say it to one person. Not perfectly, just honestly. Now, if you want to understand which patterns are the most active in your waiting cycle right now, and fear with the planner is often tangled up with the research loop and the someday cycle that we've already covered in the last couple of episodes, I created the free Unwaiting Audit. Now, this gives you a personalized picture of where you are specifically. You can find the link in the show notes or in the description below the video. I hope you'll take it. It's a lot of fun and it'll tell you a lot of information. Next week, we close out the witness phase of the WAIT series with episode 115. Now, this one is about the things you've stopped questioning. The arrangements, the roles, the dynamics, the pace of life that is tolerable enough that you never demanded they change, but they're quietly draining something essential in the process. If your life looks fine on paper, but feels a little flat when you're honest, this episode is going to name something important. I hope to see you then. Thanks for joining me, and bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to How to Lose the Weight. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you found value in this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It really helps the show reach more women like you who are ready to step into their power. For more insights and inspiration, follow me on Instagram at Holly Toscanini or visit hollytoscanini.com. Until next time, remember, stop waiting and start living.